Hi, Jason.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. What's going on?
Not much. How about you,
I'm good.
Steve? What's your prediction for the duration of this meeting?
My prediction or my hope?
Prediction. I know what your hope is.
I don't know. The agenda's not too bad. Maybe, hopefully, we'll be done by 8 o'clock at the latest.
What do you think, Steve?
The over-under's on 8:30.
I was thinking 8:15. We'll see.
And we are expecting John, right?
Yeah, we are expecting John.
Okay, good.
So will Linda do the minutes?
She will, yeah. Assuming the recording makes it to her in one piece.
Okay.
We spoke today about the availability of recordings, previous recordings, and how one should be available easily, and two, they should be available to the public easily. And right now, I don't think that's the case.
We haven't opened the meeting yet. Do you want to add that to the agenda or leave it for another day?
I imagine Jason already has.
What's that? Added to the agenda?
Yeah,
Not formally, but we can certainly discuss it.
it's 6:33. We should start. Okay, let's get started.
How about if we give till 6:35 for John to arrive?
And before we begin, guys, I can just tell you, I know Ryan is here for One Hunt Drive, and Mark and Ron are here for 6 Park Avenue. So if we can just make sure to prioritize those two so we can get them taken care of.
Okay.
Thank you, much appreciated.
I'm going to text John and then we should go ahead and start. Okay, I'm Kay Peterson, the Chair of the Board of Health, and I'm calling this meeting to order. I'm present.
Steve Kruskal, member present.
So why don't we move right away to the two situations that involve the guests at the meeting?
Yeah, why don't Why don't we do One Hunt Drive first, if that's okay, just because that is an old, issue that was continued to this meeting, so. if we can-
Okay, I can see that I made a typo on the agenda and wrote 19 Hunt Drive, unless that was. There
Oh,
is there a 19 Hunt Drive as well?
no, I didn't
No.
even see that. It's 19 Haven Terrace.
Oh, 19 Haven Terrace.
Yeah, but you have further down below, you do have One Hunt Drive, so
Okay, all right,
half credit.
half credit.
Yeah, so yeah, if I may, just to give an update on this one and close it out actually. So One Hunt Drive, just real quick. So this stems from a housing complaint from a few months back. I went out, met with the tenants, did an inspection with them, addressed their concerns, put together an order letter, and sent it to the landlord. And over the past couple of months, we've kind of just been working through that whole thing. So, I went out today, met with Ryan, who's the attorney on the tenant side, as well as Joe, who is the attorney on the landlord side. And we just, went through and verified that the 4 items that I wrote on my original order letter had been rectified. There was a few windows on the home missing screens, which they addressed. There was a leak in the roof with some water damage, which they repaired, painted over, and appear to have 100% rectified that issue. There was the cross metering with the electricity, which was kind of the crux of this, whole complaint to begin with. So what the landlord did was basically he just stepped in and said, okay, I'm just gonna pay for all the electricity myself and we'll be done with that one. So all the Eversource billing is going to him directly now. There's no, middleman or anything with the tenants or anything like that. And for the hot water as well, that was the 4th and final issue. So they installed a separate hot water heater for the downstairs tenants. So all 4 issues, as far as I'm concerned, are 100% rectified. So I'm all set to consider that matter closed following this meeting. So tomorrow, I told Ryan and Joe this earlier. I'm just going to put together something in writing to send out to all parties saying, we did the inspection on this date, verified everything was correct. So, matters considered closed at this point, just so everyone has something in writing. I don't know if the board has any questions or follow-up thoughts on that, or.
No,
I don't either. Sounds like you've addressed it all. And-
If I may,
Pardon, say it again?
I said if I may, the only outlier, Mr. Belmonte, is I was unable to confirm with my clients. They're traveling, which precipitated my visit today as well. That the landlord has taken the utilities and put them in his name. I understand that Attorney Sherman made the representation. I just couldn't verify on my end, and that was the only thing I'd say. But I assume that is what has occurred.
Yeah, and I guess unless it sounds like the Martinoviches are away,
Mhm.
Unless they believe or know something to be the contrary, it seems to have been
Yes.
corrected as far as I can tell.
Mhm.
And that's kind of one of those tricky things too. But yeah, this one can be closed as far as I'm concerned. So as long as the board's okay with that, I think that can kind of be the conclusion at this point.
And if for some reason the Martinoviches are not happy with that, they can file another complaint. Is that correct? And
Great.
Yeah, I
but
guess.
it's
Yeah,
unlikely that will be
I
the
guess,
case.
I guess at this point, if there is any further issues or further concerns, we would just rehash it as a new complaint and treat it as a separate new matter.
Okay.
Great.
Sounds good. Does anyone feel we need to vote on this?
No,
No.
All right.
All right, well, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Mr. Belmonte, for your professionalism and your follow-up. I appreciate both, certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Kruskal. Thank you all for your time and your follow-up.
Happy
Okay.
to help, Ryan. Keep me posted should anything change, okay? You have my contact, so.
We will. All right, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Hope you have a great evening.
Okay,
Thanks. Take care.
thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.
All right, shall we move on to 6 Park Avenue?
Yes, yeah, so this is a septic application that we received a week or two back. So the plan itself, there's nothing really too crazy on it. It's just kind of the main piece of this is they are requesting a variance. Instead of 100 feet from the well, they're proposing to be 50 feet from the well on the property. This particular property, Park Avenue, I don't know if the group is familiar with this road, but there are spatial constraints. Pretty much since the get-go, this particular property has kind of always had this issue where the well has been very close to the septic system. So they do already have an existing covenant attached to this property, requiring them to water quality test the well once per year. And this is kind of one of those things too where, technically they are supposed to notify abutters because they are requesting a variance, but this particular item really only affects, this particular property. It's not something that's going to impact any of the neighbors or anything of that nature. So, Ron and Mark, I know you guys are both here. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add or anything I might have missed.
No, I mean, that's pretty much what it boils down to. The existing well is less than 100 feet from the septic system as well. And the neighbor who upgraded their system had to get a waiver to be less than 100 feet from Mark's well as well, when they upgraded theirs as well. So what we've done is we've proposed a new septic system to replace the failed system in the back and move the well so we could have at least 50 feet. So we're at least in conformance with Title V. That was pretty much what it boils down to.
And there would be a covenant, once again, requiring annual testing of water quality.
I mean, technically no, because there's already one existing, so they could just, in theory, if we
Yes.
wanted them to, could just continue to abide by that.
So that previous covenant is not linked to the old septic system and
It's attached to the property,
property.
as far as
Okay.
I know. Now, I should have done a little more homework and have looked to see what we did. Because Ron brought up a good point. The leaching field at the neighbor's house is only 70 feet from Mark's well. So I don't know how recent that is or how new that is, but I assume whatever approval we went through for that would have been similar to what we're doing here. My assumption would be we probably required them to get their well tested, or something along those lines, just as part of that. But I don't know.
is there a record of previous reports from annual testing?
For this property,
Yes.
no.
Mark does have them though.
Yeah, so we just don't have them in the office. So it's not to say they don't exist somewhere. It's just we don't have them.
And what are the results of those tests? How have they been?
The nitrogen levels are all within standards. The only item that they seem to be having an issue with is a high salt content in the water. Their well is pretty close to the roadway.
Mhm.
And
Pretty
it's
close.
not a deep well. So what I suggested to Mark and his wife was that in the process of moving the well to get our 50 feet, that we probably double the depth of the well and increase the depth of the casing, so we draw from a deeper aquifer and eliminate the salt content. And that would also help with any other contaminants being brought in, because we'll be well deeper from the yield of the well, from the cone of influence. So I think he's talking to the well contractor to go in, probably at least double the depth of the well to eliminate those concerns.
And how deep is the current well?
80 feet.
And have there ever been coliforms with well testing, with water testing?
The results that I've seen, no. And as far as I know, and Mark, if you're there, can confirm that coliform hasn't been an issue.
Could the board see the results of the last 5 years worth of testing? We would like copies of them on an annual basis.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, any more follow-up questions or thoughts or?
I agree with Steve. I think it would be good to see the results of those water tests before we make a decision, and that would give us, we could, if we want, to also review the adjacent property and abutting property and see what, just be sure we're informed about that as well.
Right. So we'll get you the water test results, and Jason, I'm gonna have to defer to you about the neighbor. I do have a copy of the as-built, but as far as what they, if there was any restrictions applied, I don't know.
Well, let's, if I may, just gonna share my screen for the group here. Let's take a quick look at that plan. Can everyone see this? Assuming I can zoom in here.
Yep.
Let's go a little bit more. Yeah, so you can see here too. So this is the neighbor's leaching area. And you see here, there's a note about the variance for the 70 feet to
Yeah.
Marksville here. And so I don't know where this Oakley well is.
It's up.
Because the one up,
That's the well right there.
gotcha. Yeah, so really the only water that would be impacted in this case appears to be whoever, whether it continues to be Mark or whoever ends up buying his house, will be the property owner here. They're the only ones who will be impacted by, this situation. So it's really just boils down to what are these water quality tests looking like? If they're fine, no big deal. If they're horrific, then, maybe we need to look at what we can do.
Yeah, no, well, we'll get you a couple of some rounds. I'm not sure how many he's got still, but we'll get you some testing. Like I said, nothing stood out when I looked at it other
Okay.
than the salt content, and the intent is to increase the distance from the septic field with the new well. So like I said, so we can at least conform to Title V. And also, like I said, I'm recommending that he goes a little deeper encases that well a little deeper so we draw from a different aquifer. That will help improve the water quality in general. So,
Great. All right, so how does the board want to proceed? We can kind of do this pending us receiving quality tests, or?
Let's see the results annually, preferably from the last 5 years.
well, the septic system is the septic system. So the only thing we're trying to just to resolve is what we're going to do with the well, or what restrictions or tests that we're going to have to do. Is that correct?
Well, we just want to be sure that the tests of the last few years have been okay. If they are, in all likelihood, we'll say, go ahead with your plan.
Is there a way that we could approve the well conditional upon
Review of
receipt
the 5 years worth
review
of
the
tests.
5 years of tests, and we could, without having to meet as a body, we could each individually review those, and if there were no objections from any of us, then we could approve then we would approve the well. Does that make sense?
Well,
Steve?
should the test be awry, and they're already going forward with whatever they intend to do, that may be inconvenient for them for us to say no, and wouldn't be, and they would have wasted perhaps some effort and time.
Maybe I didn't make it clear what I was implying. I think that
It's hard to say go ahead to somebody when you don't know what the tests are going to show.
Steve, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, could we say now that if we review those tests, say next week, and feel comfortable with them, that they could then go ahead without us convening another meeting? And if we didn't feel comfortable with the results of those tests, then they would not proceed. Is that procedurally okay?
I'm going to ask Nina.
It seems like it would be, and I think it's very simple. We make a motion to approve the permit contingent on review of the last 5 years, and stipulate that they can't begin drilling until they get final sign off from the board.
Jason, what do you think about that procedure?
I mean, that doesn't make a difference to me. You guys are the board. It's up to you. I mean, you could kind of just leave it so it's, you kind of just leave it in my hands and leave it up to me once I get these reports and review them. And just, give me the approval to go ahead and do what I need to do.
I mean, I'd be comfortable with that, Jason.
I would too. Steve, are you?
Yes,
Okay.
And I know I've been working with Mark a lot on different things the last couple of weeks, his own property and other projects in town. He's pretty prompt and responsive on a lot of these things. So, if we tell him we need these reports, he'll probably have them in the office by tomorrow. So, it should move fairly quickly once we have everything. And assuming the reports are good, which it sounds like they are, we should be able to move forward on this one.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said too about, the well being in the front yard and the septic being in the backyard there. It does have, the house is kind of a buffer in that sense. So, yeah, I don't really foresee any issues. So once I get those reports, I think we can probably go ahead on this one.
Okay, so anyone want to take a stab at a motion?
So I move we approve the well permit contingent on the owner supplying us the last 5 years of water quality test and final review by Jason to ensure that there are no water quality issues that need to be addressed.
I think we're technically approving the variance.
Oh, the variance, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It was perfect otherwise.
Do you think? I think I think you should restate it, John, just so it's very clear for Linda when she's reviewing the recording.
All right, so I move that we approve the variance contingent upon the property owner providing us with the last 5 years of water quality tests and final review by Jason to ensure that there are no water quality issues that need to be addressed.
Do we need to define what the variance is in the motion?
No, I
Sorry, what
don't,
was that, Kay?
What, John?
Well, what did you just say? Do we need to define that the variance is?
Yeah. Or is that going to be clear?
I think it's fine.
Okay. All right, I'll second the motion. I support the motion. Kay Peterson.
Yes,
I-
Steve,
And yes, John Quackenbush.
And just aside from the variance itself, did anyone have any questions or concerns just with the rest of the plan or the plan as a whole? They do have to get a deed restriction. That is one thing. I don't know if so a minimum design for a septic is 3 bedrooms. In this case, they are designing for 2, just due to their spatial constraints. So it's just, you guys know the drill with covenants. It would just be a covenant, deed restriction, restricting the property to 2 bedrooms. And Ron probably knows better than I would. I don't think there's any possible way that this could have been a 3-bedroom design. There just isn't, just doesn't have the space for it. So that is one piece, but other than that, I mean, Ron usually does a pretty nice job on these. I don't have any concerns otherwise.
Okay. We don't need to vote on the covenant and the deed restriction.
Not unless you guys want to vote to approve the plan. I don't know if that's up to you guys. Because it's fine to move forward with just my approval, but if you guys want to vote on it as well, that's up to you.
No, let's just move forward.
Okay, all right. I think we are good, Ron and Mark. So if you guys can just get those to me as soon as possible, just so we can move forward. I know you guys kind of have it's time sensitive on this one, so.
Yep. Sounds
I-
good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I know.
Bye-bye. All right, shall we go back up to the top of the agenda? Let's just mention the meeting next month will be July 10th because of the holiday. Let's move to approve the minutes from the May 8th meeting. Does anyone need to have those pulled up?
I'm
John or
fine.
Steve, you okay without them up on the screen?
Yeah, that's fine, Kay.
Okay, Steve?
I'm fine.
Okay. Did anyone have any amendments to the modifications of the minutes?
None on my part.
I just had a question. In number 6, which mentions the ice cream truck, we didn't discuss the particular issues with the ice cream truck, but that seems fine with me since it's really, there was no proposal from any ice cream truck to operate here. Agreed?
Agreed.
There was not, thankfully.
Okay, so I have no suggestions for change. Someone want to propose that we approve the minutes? Make a motion?
As we approve the minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Jason, you want to continue with other agent reports?
Sure, we can check out these other 2 septic plans if you guys would like.
Yep.
Just gonna share my screen again. All right, 17 Farm Street. Can do that one first. So you'll notice on each of these plans too, the red marker. In typical Mike fashion, I also do myself. I just typically don't quite mark up to the extent he usually did. 17 Farm Street, they're proposing to add flow on this one. It's a pretty decent sized lot. Standard gravity system. Reserve area. Nothing too complex on that one. You'll see a couple of my notes on here, just making sure they submit building application and everything for new house, flow test, existing well, just to make sure it has sufficient flow. Just kind of little reminders and whatnot. Anyone have any questions on this one? It's a 5-bedroom house, by the way, no garbage grinder.
And this is being done because the house, did it fail Title V or?
I don't believe it is. I think they're just raising and rebuilding the house, so they're doing a larger bedroom design.
More bedrooms.
4 bedrooms, yes. Excuse me. Questions?
I don't have questions beyond that. John or Steve?
No, no questions.
Okey doke. And again, did you guys want to vote on this, or are you just okay to just leave it be? You can see I stamped it with my approval, so that's all we really need.
That's fine.
Okey doke. All right, 19 Haven Terrace. This is the one on your meeting minutes. Kay put as
Yep.
Matthew Hunt. You can see on this one, excuse me, what the heck happened? This one very straightforward also. Gravity system again. This one's just an upgrade. 5-bedroom house with a garbage grinder. You can see I almost have no notes on this one just because there really wasn't much of anything for me to add.
So Jason, when this leaching field is as close to the property boundary as this is,
Yeah.
do you determine the distance from the neighbor's well?
Yeah, so typically they mark that or should mark that on the plan. As part of all these, any engineer that does these has to kind of do some homework and do some digging, look at abutting properties, see what's there type of thing. And so the leaching field does in itself need to be at least 10 feet from the property line. But also you need to make sure, it's not shown here, but you need to make sure there's nothing within, 100 feet if it's a well on the other side, or, whatever it may be. You can see the little note there in green, Dover Land Conservation Trust. So that's noting to me or pointing out that there's nothing on that other side.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yep. So yes, good question. And actually you can see on the bottom right too. So whatever property is to the right, there is a well there. So that's been marked.
Oh, with the red circle?
Yeah, I have a circle around it. Yep.
Okay.
Questions? And I believe this one was for a failed system. So this is just a simple upgrade.
Mhm.
All right. And I'm just gonna stop the share. Anything on any of those 3 septic plans, or can we move on to wells?
I think we can move the wells.
Excellent.
Steve or John?
Sounds good to me.
So not many well applications since our last meeting. 2 that stand out for sure. 33 Pine Street. I think it was our last meeting where we had the variance request on that one, where he wanted to start building before he had secured water for his property. So they've since drilled a new well. And they attempted to do a flow test. And within minutes, it was so horrifically bad that they stopped. So the next step for them is they're gonna have to frack or do something to see what they can get in terms of yield. I'd heard they were gonna try and do it later this week, but I also haven't gotten any kind of application or anything from them, so they'll just need to make sure they submit that obviously before they move forward on anything.
And you'll be present for that test?
Yes, yep, we have to witness that. It's a little disappointing for them because it's basically the same position they were in with their old well, so I don't know why fracking the old well wasn't an option. They've already decommissioned that and filled it in, so they're kind of right back to where they were, unfortunately. So then obviously the next step is to frack that, and we'll see what happens. And the other one I got was for the Red Robin project, also known as 6163 County Road or County Street. It was just for an irrigation well. So that'll be right in the front. One of the stipulations with them, because they're using town water for
Well,
one of
Fair
the abutting, yeah. But one of the conditions of that was they couldn't use any of it for irrigation, so they basically had to drill their own irrigation well in order to make that happen, so that's what they're doing. Questions on either of those wells?
No,
All right, so housing we already did, so we're good on One Hunt Drive. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask about the letter you received or the email you received. That you forwarded to me. I think you forwarded to all of us about from the son. About his father's system.
Yeah, we can discuss that if you guys would like. Even though it's not on the agenda, but I did do follow up on it today.
You sent that email to all of us, right?
I did.
Yeah.
And the person who did send it in wanted to be anonymous, so I'm trying to honor that as best I can, so but yeah,
If you want to know, we don't have to discuss it in the meeting then. You could
Well,
talk to each of us about it at a different time.
Well, let's talk about anonymous. If someone sends in a letter and signs their name, and in the body of the letter, they don't specifically ask to be anonymous, that's a little bit problematic. I mean, because inadvertently, things come out as they just did. So is there a way that we can give people some guidance regarding that?
yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. We can do our best to honor it, but if they sent an email with their full name on it,
It's all right.
yeah, and someone submits a FOIA request, I
Thank
mean,
you.
John, we're having trouble hearing you. John, are you trying to say something?
No, I'm fine, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, no, I was just saying, if someone sends us an email with their full name in it and then asked to be anonymous, we can log the complaint and put it as an anonymous complaint, but if someone ever does a FOIA request or something of the like, I don't know that we generally go through and redact names or that sort of thing, so it still may come out, we can do our best to accommodate the request, but
Well, we're not going to be in the business of redacting anything.
right, that's what I mean.
well, it seems if someone is attempting to would like to make a reasonable attempt to keep things confidential, that we can accommodate that. As long as we don't have to use a procedure that we don't view as correct or in some way compromise what we do. We can just talk about this offline. Because there's nothing we need to decide as a board related to the situation.
Well, I'll just say this, there's sufficient evidence for me to act off of and would recommend, or not recommend, but they need to upgrade their septic system. It's just a matter of how long of a time frame we wish to give them. Because it's really up to us. There's no set number. Typically in the past for something like this, where I've seen a septic system that's ponding, if you will, you give them 90 days to get it sorted out. And in addition to that, the immediate thing they have to do is they have to get it pumped, because that at least buys time, so it's not like consistently overflowing.
Yeah.
And in this particular scenario, I mean, it's right at the top of this little hill, and at the bottom of a hill is somebody else's backyard with a trampoline, kids' toys, so that the kids are playing back there. So it's like doomsday scenario. I mean, it's not all running down the hill. Luckily it's all staying at the top and not traveling too far, but it certainly could escalate if it's not addressed. Yeah, so my plan is to put together an order letter and get it sent out as soon as I can, so that can start being worked on.
And you don't need our approval for that, correct?
No.
Okay.
But my plan was to do 90 days.
That's fine. That's been that number in the past.
Seems reasonable, particularly given that pumping will provide a quick fix.
Yeah, so they'll have to get that pumped, in the next couple of days, maybe sometime in the next week or so, and send us the pumping records, just so we have some sort of proof that it did happen. And go from there.
And how
And
long
from-
would it take a tank to fill up again? I mean, obviously it depends on how many people are in a house and so forth, but would you have to be concerned about pumping a second time before the 90 days have passed?
Yeah, it's only one person in the house plus a caregiver who's there. I don't know if they're there full time or what the situation is, but I don't think it's getting that much use.
So it probably wouldn't fill up again before.
Yeah, and I also don't know the last time it was pumped. It could just be, way overdue, and getting it pumped might sort of alleviate this for a little bit, but it's still clearly, that shouldn't happen. It means the system has failed and something needs to be done about it.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's my plan. I'm gonna send a letter and that'll be that. We'll go from there.
great.
You want to take the lead on tobacco, or you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so obviously one of our topics we've discussed at length the last couple of meetings and beyond capping the tobacco licenses. It seemed at our last meeting, obviously we were missing John, so having any kind of vote on the matter was kind of tough because there was only 2 people. So I kind of wanted to put this on the agenda as an attempt to kind of get back on track with this and just decide definitively what we want to do. And we seem to kind of have come off the rails a little bit, you know, at this past meeting. So I now that the group is all here together at this one, I just wanted to get something, you know, kind of set in stone so we can move forward. And either stand pat or, you know, move forward and do our hearing on this at our next meeting potentially in July. So I'll leave that up to you guys, I guess, and see what does the group want to do with that.
Who wants to
So-
speak first?
Go ahead, Kay.
No, go ahead, John.
No, I mean, we've discussed this in the past. And, in looking at the town, I think it makes a lot of sense to cap the number of tobacco licenses. It's something we can always revisit in the future if we want to expand it. But, based on our previous discussions, I think it makes perfect sense.
No, I disagree. I think it impedes the possibility of further expansion in downtown, which would provide potentially necessary food sources for people to purchase, in addition to tobacco, because we're about to become a food desert at the end of the month. And that license will be in the air of Dover Market.
What do you mean it will be in the air?
Well, it probably, he has to apply again. I understand he is not. Though I suspect people who are potential purchasers of that business ongoing and have it be ongoing, would want to know what the availability of a tobacco license is. And it may become unclear to them and ward them off. And I think we got to stay away from the issue because of that.
So if the Dover Market goes out of business, that license will be available to another entity.
Well, would you say that the people who take over Dover Market might have a claim to it and all of a sudden it's not available because it was taken by someone else? That second license?
Oh, you mean if suddenly we thought we needed a third license?
Yeah.
in town?
Yeah.
So then it would be it's within our purview to then revisit the issue and decide, well, after all, we do want 3 rather than 2. But
You can go ahead on this. I'm voting against it.
okay, so someone want to make a motion? John, do you want to make a motion? I can make a motion, right, as chair, or is it preferable that I not?
Oh,
And Kay,
sorry.
just- If I
Go ahead,
may, so we would kind of be, typically, the way you do it is you sunset it, meaning you start higher and then reduce. But it sounds like you want to go lower and then potentially add. So would it, if we are going to move forward on this, would it make sense to do it as a 3 and then maybe down the road a 2, or?
I think we just set it at 2 right now, honestly. I think that makes the most sense.
I do too. I mean, it's theoretically possible that the Dover Market could keep a license tied up and a third vendor could come in who wanted to have a license, but that seems like a very remote possibility. And it's, what's more likely is that if the Dover market goes out of business, that we'll then have an available tobacco license for somebody new to transfer it to.
Say someone applies for a license on Snyder's property, which he may or may not develop on Whiting Road, and wants to put a 7-Eleven in there. Or someone wants to put something in on 109, which has some commercial zoning. All of a sudden, you've locked out a market for the center of town as far as tobacco goes.
Well, again, Steve, we haven't locked it out because it's within our power to
Yeah,
change the number of licenses.
Yeah, I think
I
though,
don't
too,
understand the
you know,
optics in this.
Pardon?
I don't think you guys understand the optics on this.
Well, why don't you explain the optics?
The optics is that there should be a tobacco license available freely for a food establishment that may replace the Dover market.
But the Dover Market's tobacco license will be available freely.
It may or may not be. It could be applied for by someone else.
yeah, that's true. It wouldn't necessarily be guaranteed to somebody else coming in, I think is what Steve is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I guess my thing too is if we're already talking about having this or doing this and then already maybe changing it down the road, it almost seems like it would make the most sense to just leave it be rather than go through the effort. But that's just my 2 cents. You guys are the ones that get to vote on it, so.
So I think you could argue also that maybe we should have 4, because maybe we'd have the Dover Market tying up one and then have 2 different business entities applying for others, or we could have 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, it's all of that seems pretty unlikely, and we can't plan for all of those. I think it's I'm opposed to having an unlimited number be available, because then we have no control. And I think we could, I don't think it's likely that we would need to review what we did and modify the number of tobacco licenses from 2 to 3. And so I think I would I would propose that we just go ahead and limit it to 2, with the idea that we would increase if need be.
And I agree with you, Kay. I don't see a need to increase. It's a very small town, right? I mean, it's surprising to me we already have 2. And so, I think this is the prudent move to take at the current point in time.
Steve, are you aware of any other requests for tobacco licenses?
I'm not aware of any active requests. I'm aware of people thinking about developing commercial areas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, since you guys have been in Dover, Steve and Kay, do you know of any other tobacco licenses or retailers or anything that have actually been around?
Texaco Station in 109. The old Texaco station may have had one.
Gotcha. I mean, was there ever anything like where the deli was or where the bank was or anything like that where anyone else was selling tobacco?
I don't think the
And-
pharmacy, there was a pharmacy where the
The
deli.
pharmacy, I believe, had tobacco license.
You think it did?
I believe so.
And so what you're, so let me just think about this. So Steve, what you're saying is that, if we were able to say, let's say we had 3 licenses, we allowed a maximum of 3 licenses, then we would have one additional one available, even if the Dover market continues to operate and to tie up 1 license, then we would be able to say to somebody coming in, looking at possibilities, that another license is available in Dover, which might encourage them to proceed. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that we shouldn't impede commercial development if it's beneficial to the town.
Well, I can
Well, you
see,
can-
go ahead, John.
I was gonna say, well, you can argue that, some commercial development is beneficial to the town. You can also argue that having an unlimited number of tobacco licenses, which would make commercial development unrestricted in the context of tobacco licenses, that's in the benefit of the town either, right? I mean, there's some balance you have to reach.
I think this effort is something that's posturing and not beneficial to the town.
So unlimited tobacco is beneficial to the town?
I'm not saying unlimited tobacco is beneficial to the town. The town has an obligation to educate people about tobacco use. Hopefully it does that in the schools. But I'm also saying that given the tenuous situation of the town, as far as the risk of it becoming a food desert very shortly, I don't want to muddy the waters.
So it's clear that making tobacco less accessible to kids reduces smoking. And I think it's wrong to ignore that. And I think it's wrong to have unlimited number of tobacco licenses. I wouldn't be terribly opposed to setting a limit of 3 licenses and saying that we could revisit that later if we want to. I mean, we could ratchet it down at some point in the future if we felt that was important.
Have you had any new applicants since anyone here has been on the board?
Not since I have. I think it's all kind of theoretical, but I
just
suppose it's
curious.
possible.
Like, I'm in favor of 2, if we're going to compromise, I can compromise at 3, but I think what makes the most sense, given the effect of tobacco sales on smoking among kids, that 2 is the right number.
Um,
When the mobile station, their sales are temporarily suspended. I didn't hear a huge outcry in town that only having 1 vendor was causing substantial problems.
Well, you might want to take a look at the hours of the Dover market currently, and their hours soon to be, they're non-existent hours.
so I think that if the Dover market goes out of business, we'll have a tobacco license available, and word can get out about that. I mean,
Yep, I agree.
and if that gets taken by somebody, then we can revisit whether we might need another. I would propose that we do that.
All
Oh,
right, so I would move that we limit the number of tobacco licenses in town to 2.
I second. All in favor? I, Kay Peterson.
No, Stephen Kruskall.
Hi, John Clark.
Okay,
So hearing at the next meeting or,
hearing at the next meeting.
okay, so we'll need to post that. We'll need to advertise it. Which I can take care of.
There have to be 2 notices a week apart, is that right?
I have the full write-up from Nita's office, just outlining exactly what we need to do.
But we have enough time.
Oh, yeah, plenty.
Okay,
Actually, if I did it tomorrow, it would be too early.
okay,
I'd have to wait a week or two.
all right.
All right. What about trash hauler and dumpster regulations?
Sounds
I-
like a good next step.
Yeah, I attached a couple things to the drive. It's a couple different versions on there. There was one I put together. There was one our Board of Health actually put together a few years back. Before Kay and John's time, Steve was here for it. He actually shared those with me. I believe those were combined dumpster and hauler regulations. So at this point, it's kind of a matter of, I don't know if Kay can still hear me, or I think she can. Yeah, so I guess it's a matter of which version we want to roll with, and if we want to do hauler and dumpster, just hauler, or kind of what we want our approach to be here. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Well, Jason, could you talk for a second about your perspective based on your knowledge of what other towns do? Do they have both regulations? I believe I recall you saying that it's unusual to have dumpster regulations, but I'm maybe.
Yeah, obviously trash hauler regulations are extremely common. We're one of the only towns in Massachusetts I've heard of that doesn't have hauler regulations. Dumpster regs are a lot more limited. Certainly there's a handful of towns that have them, but for the most part, when it comes to dumpsters, they either anything pertaining to dumpster issues falls into the food safety category, or it falls into the nuisance category. So permitting them or regulating them beyond that sort of doesn't seem like it's worth it. Now haulers, on the other hand, definitely should be permitted. So I think that's kind of low hanging fruit for us for the most part.
Well, if that's the standard in the surrounding towns, I think it makes sense to have the same type of regulation here. We can always address dumpsters at a later point if they become an issue. And it sounds like as far as I know, they haven't been an issue yet in town.
No, I know there's been one or two dumpsters in years past that have had a complaint or two, but I haven't had anything really since I've been around town. And believe me, I've dealt with some horrific dumpster issues in my career, so I'm used to all kinds of stuff like that, but I've never seen anything here, knock on wood.
Steve, remember the issue with a dumpster maybe 3
Well,
years?
the question is, do the refuse containers behind 2 of our commercial establishments count as dumpsters?
Yes.
So there have been issues
Okay.
in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
So
so those are the dumpsters I'm referring to. So they have had complaints. Not since I've been here, but certainly in years past.
So they certainly have had complaints. The question is, do we have the authority we need to deal with those complaints? And my sense is that we have. Steve, do you agree?
We certainly have assumed we have.
Yeah,
It's just whether that should be codified.
Well, isn't it codified with respect to nuisances already? Is that what you were implying, Jason, that?
Yes, if I ever get a dumpster complaint for one of our establishments, it would be taken care of. I don't know, within the hour, I would take care of it.
And we have the authority to do that now without specific dumpster regulations because we regulate. I mean, what about our bylaws or,
Yeah, for any food establishment, it falls under the food code, and for any non-food establishment, it just falls into the nuisance category, which we can enforce under chapter 111.
Okay,
so we don't see any regulatory deficit there. So then we don't need dumpster regulations. So we should focus on the trash hauler regulations then.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, I think that's my preference / recommendation.
So if you look at the old version that was proposed in town before, and the other version that you put together modeled on what the surrounding towns are doing, what's the primary difference? What are the primary differences?
I mean, truthfully, if you look at any trash hauler regulation for any board of health within Massachusetts, they're all more or less the same with, minute changes. Everyone kind of models them off each other for the most part. So if you stack up any reg versus another one, they're pretty much the same.
That's what I figured.
And did you, in reviewing the draft that Steve had in his files, did you see anything that would be a plus if we added that to the more standard trash hauler regs? Is there anything?
Well, the big plus for the one that Steve shared with me is that, if I'm not mistaken, Steve, it was already reviewed and gone through by town council, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so I mean, everything's already been done with it, as it was 5 years ago, so I'd probably just shoot it back to them, just maybe to have them go through it again, just to make sure nothing's changed since then. But that would be the nice thing about utilizing that one, or even pieces from that one. Kind of all the legwork and stuff has already been done. Because the simple one that I put together is well and good, but I'd still probably have to send it to town council and get their take and everything.
Then
So-
why don't we move forward with the one Steve had? Just get the town council to take one final look, and move forward, putting it in place.
After deleting the references to dumpsters, right? Because. it's
Yeah,
a-
because I was gonna say, I think this particular one, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the combined regs, so it's dumpster and hauler.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, it seems there's been a big push just kind of across the town in general for us to get going on the trash hauler stuff, from what I've gathered at least, so.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of complaints. So
Yeah, so I think the goal kind of would be, I'm looking at the calendar now, it's June 5th. The idea would kind of be, we get this live and in place for next calendar year, since trash hauler permits traditionally run January 1 to December 31st anyway, so it seems the timing would kind of line up here if we're deciding to move forward on this now.
I'd like to see us take our draft and have the people from the DPW and recycling committee review it before we send it to town council.
What's the DPW committee?
I didn't mean committee, I meant the DPW and the recycling committee. The DPW and the recycling committee, not the
So
DPW committee.
do we have a DPW? Don't we call it something else?
Highway Department,
Highway
Public
Department.
Works, all the above.
we have a director of Public Works,
So Public Works.
Public Works. Is there anyone else who should review it? Anyone else who's been complaining or,
So I think we ought to let a couple of users have a crack at seeing what we are writing for their feedback.
As
Just-
in trash hauler?
Trash haulers.
Yeah, I mean, we could, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. We're probably the last town in the state to implement trash hauler rights, so
I know, but there should be a pattern when we regulate a group or individuals that we listen to feedback from them before we finalize new regulations.
no, I agree with you. It's just my point being, it's probably not going to be anything different than what they're already doing in every other town.
In all likelihood, but at least you've,
Talk to somebody.
Well, don't we have to put it up for public comment anyway?
Yeah, that's a good point too.
But-
Um,
Right.
that step. I think that it's worthwhile bringing the trash haulers on board prior to doing that.
and but in what way, Steve? How would you do that?
Then you avoid the issues with the public that might arise when trash haulers speak up as the public.
So would you send it to several of them?
I extend it to the two largest current operators in town. That accounts for 80-odd% of the activity.
I'm not sure why we would do that other than during the public comment period.
Because it's an egalitarian thing to do, believe it or not. It's how you build consensus.
I'm just sharing my screen here if you guys don't mind. I want to make sure we're all looking at and talking about the correct, because I uploaded a couple of things here. Was it this version?
This is the one that the Board of Health drafted a few years ago, right?
Yep.
It's got the format and the language that Nina was okay with it. Which is its beauty.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. That's why I like this one, because it's, I mean, pretty much ready to rock and roll. Unless we wanna, it sounds like we wanna maybe scratch anything for dumpster. Oh, and this, I guess, is the clean version, not the email format.
So Steve, in general, I agree with you, and I think that's why I'm supportive of having the recycling committee and people from Public Works or the Highway Department review the regulations before we proceed. But these trash haulers all are regulated by every single town, and I think that I just don't think it would be meaningful to have them take a look at our regulations, which are going to be almost identical to what every other towns are. And in a way, it's not mindful of people's time to ask them to review them. And for us to have Jason go talking to trash haulers about them. I can't understand what you're saying, John. John, you're breaking up. John, are you trying to say something?
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, yeah, I'm almost home, so the service is bad. You know, I tend to agree with you, Kay. I'm not sure what it buys us. And again, you know, I see them having the opportunity to comment if they have any real concerns during the public comment period. They can also reach out to us if they're concerned. But, you know, given the fact that this is pretty similar to what surrounding towns do, I don't see there being a huge issue here either.
Well, what if Jason were to call the the two haulers who do most of the work and just say, hey, we're going to have regulations. We haven't before. Do you have an interest in hearing what we're specifically proposing? And telling them that we'll be having a hearing. And they do need to learn about it in some fashion, so. It could be before we have our hearing that they hear that we're doing this.
Well, again, my recommendation, Jason, is that you reach out to at least two, preferably the two most active in town, and just ask for their feedback expect it within a day or two.
Yeah, it can't hurt. I'm happy
All
to
right,
do it.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, me too. Who are the two biggest, Steve?
Well, Dover Trucking has a different name now.
They were sold to E.L. Harvey, I think.
Yeah,
And is there another one?
yeah, there's one more. You can read the name on their trash barrels. Most of them are pretty conforming regarding that already.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I can reach out to DPW too and just, you know, kind of say, hey, who's like can you just give me the names of like the 2, 3, 4, you know, most popular haulers in town, just so I can maybe connect with them. And I can you know, send them emails, and if I get a response with feedback, great. If I don't hear back, at least we tried to connect.
Mhm.
Now, do we probably want to go through this first and clean it up in terms of the dumpster stuff, right? And then, or what do we want to do with that?
I would say yes.
Yes, I trust that you can expurgate all the dumpster stuff.
Yeah, and then I can share with you guys just so you can do a quick go through. Because I mean, I don't know, trash hauler regs for the most part are pretty standard. They all kind of require the same things. Is there any absolute must-haves that may not be included on this? Like, for example, if we want them to maybe report, like, you know, how much tonnage and stuff they're going through, or
Well, the recycling committee may weigh in on that. That is important to them,
okay,
more likely than not.
And there is something about tonnage in them. I can't remember which version, whether it was the Dover one or the
yeah,
more generic one. I do think the recycling committee may have some thoughts about it.
Okay.
All right, shall we move on?
Sure.
Temporary food events and permitting. Want to go with that, Jason?
Yeah, so if I may just give some background, so there was an event recently in town. I saw a sign posted advertising the event. So I got in touch with the person who was kind of hosting it or putting it together. And I simply told them they needed to make sure they applied for a food permit before the event. And they basically got back to me and said, what are you talking about? I've never had to do that. I've been here X amount of years. I've done this event for X amount of years. What do you mean I have to do this all of a sudden? So it kind of brought up this whole thing of, I've come to realize that temporary food events and whatnot here, and just these different things that might be going on. I don't believe in the past it's ever really been enforced or advertised or told that they need to get food permits. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of came up with a plan for that, for how we want to handle those going forward. It is a requirement of the state, it's not a Dover regulation or anything like that. Typically, anytime you're serving food to the public, you need to get some form of food permit. There is some exceptions, if everything is prepackaged, doesn't need to be refrigerated, that sort of thing. Or if it's for only a specific private group and it's not like an open invite type thing, you don't need one. One of the great points they brought up was, well, this isn't posted anywhere. There's nothing explaining that anywhere on your website, which is true. So my thought kind of was, maybe I can put together some sort of memo or FAQ sheet, just so anyone doing any type of food event or anything, they can reference and just, do I or don't I need a food permit type of thing. Just so there's a little bit more communication and so no one is kind of caught off guard in the future when they're asked to submit a food application. I don't know if anyone had any thoughts or any questions on any of that. And I know, sorry, John, I know you cut out for like a minute or two of that.
No problem. It sounds sensible to me, so.
I think also it would make sense to send a copy of whatever you post on the website out to people, actively push it out to people who might not otherwise be browsing our website and not realize it's there, but keep people in town. The selectmen, Felicia, you could just work your way down through all the departments. I think it's something everybody ought to know, because any department could end up having a temporary or a food event.
Not like a going away party.
Like a going away party. Well, what about a going away party?
Well, good example. That was a private event. That was just for the townhouse, really. It wasn't open to the public, so
I see.
you
Yeah.
need a food permit.
Yeah.
Good question, though. Good example. But yeah, I think for as shocked as this person was that I was asking them to do this, I was equally shocked on my end, because I was kind of like, I've never in my career heard of someone serving food to the public and not needing a food permit. So for as crazy as they thought I was, I thought they were equally crazy. So
Or the whole town was crazy.
yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. So yeah, I've only been here the last 6 months, so anything that happened before that, out of my control. Obviously, I can only control what we're doing from here on out. So I think if we can just maybe improve the communication on that and just come up with something definitive. I know most other boards of health, if you go to their websites, they have some sort of FAQ sheet or something that can be referenced. I've actually already updated it's on our Board of Health page, our temporary food application to kind of better suit, what I'm looking for. So that's already been updated on our website. But yeah, I think if I can just put something out and just, if this is something we can kind of police and stay on top of going forward. Steve?
If in your informational mode, you're sending information out to Selectmen and Felicia, might you not include parties that have carried on these events in the past, such that they do have that one bit of notice that going forward, this will be the situation?
Yeah, because there are some organizations that departments that do them regularly, right? That
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, not just town departments, but the churches run events, the Legion. I don't know what kind of license or permit they have. Charles River School, I know, has a fair. We could probably pick up the major organizations that do run different events during the year.
Yeah.
And just reach out to them proactively.
Does Parks and Rec run the Dover Days Fair?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I am asking anybody. I'm not sure. I kind of think they do, but I'm not sure.
I'm not even quite sure as to what Dover Days is, so I assume it's a little festival that they do every year.
Yeah, on the green.
Yeah, so depending on what exactly is going on at that event, if someone's coming out with a hot dog cart and selling hot dogs, they need a food permit. If someone's handing out bags of Cape Cod potato chips, don't need a permit.
What happens if they're dispensing free tobacco?
Chewing or smoking?
We can only hope.
Well, Jason, kudos to you for identifying this as a problem for us.
Yeah, and I will say too, I sort of made it sound like I've gotten 0 temporary food applications, which isn't the case. I've also gotten a ton. There's an event going on at the Legion next week where they're going to have all kinds of food set up. So I've had a couple different vendors reach out and I've helped them get set up. So yes, there's some people who haven't complied or didn't know that they had to comply. But for each one of those, I've also had someone on the flip side who's actually doing the right thing and doing what they need to do. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Great. All right. So maybe when you finish your FAQ sheet, you could let us know and we'll each read it so we know what you're posting.
Yeah, and the truth is too, that's another one of those things where there's already a million of them out there. So I can just kind of pull from elsewhere and just tweak it to, be more Dover specific. Actually, I don't remember, but I think I've probably written one in the past too that I probably have somewhere. So
Yeah. Plagiarism is a good thing.
Yep.
In
Sometimes.
this case, yes.
In our case it is, but in a lot of other cases it's not.
It's
So
not,
just
right.
wanted to-
Okay, so town summer rec program.
Yeah, so I kind of just wanted to pose the question to the group. So recreational camps, well, I should start. So we're just about getting into camp season at this point. Most of our summer camps are starting in a couple of weeks. I have about, I want to say I have 7 or 8 applications I need to review from various camps. Our town recreational camp, technically town camps can be exempt. It's up to us if we actually want to license them or not. My understanding is our town camp has never been licensed by the Board of Health. I did meet with them sometime in the winter, so a few months back. Just kind of seeing where they were at with camp stuff and discuss the idea of maybe licensing them and just, you know, making sure they did all the necessary plans, that sort of thing, answer any questions they had. I haven't gotten an application from them at this point. I haven't talked to them. You know, I can always, I'll probably connect with them and just see where they're at, but it kind of posed the question of, do we even want to license them, I guess, because we don't have to. I didn't know what the group thought. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, obviously you trust that they're doing what they need to do. And if, you know, if we license them and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, then we're the ones who don't look great. And on the flip side, if we don't license them and they're messing up, then I don't know, they don't look the greatest. So it's kind of one of those things, I guess. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts on the whole thing are.
What do surrounding towns do?
Westwood licenses theirs, I know that. As far as others in our county, that I'm not sure of.
Well, I think we should be in the majority of whatever other towns akin to us do. There's no shame in licensing Parks and Rec for food. If that is the mode. I'm also concerned about being assured that larger ones that run camps that I'm aware of, such as Hale and Charles River, have applied for licensure.
They have. Just those two examples I'm saying. I've gotten applications from Hale and Charles River.
And perhaps you could shoot us a list of the ones that have applied.
Sure.
I think that's a good plan. And I guess I'm inclined to think that assuming that many other of our kin also license their town recreational programs, that I would be in favor of doing it, because I think it's in the interest of making sure that the programs are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I don't have any reason to think they're not, but I think the regulation of camps is a good thing in general.
Yeah, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever actually looked into the state camp code, but it's probably one of the most complex of any of the codes that we deal with, believe it or not.
Well, we had our COVID experience regarding camps.
Right, so you guys have an idea.
It was a learning experience.
It's very in-depth, and it's very kind of, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
Camps are not a thing that health agents look forward to. It's
But I would say it's for a good cause, you know, and those regulations are, for the most part, all there because they're designed to prevent something horrible from happening to kids.
yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why the camp stuff's the most important, because it all boils down to, you know, the kids not getting sick, hurt, or even worse.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. So
Well, I would venture to say that Parks and Rec may not welcome being regulated, but if the number of surrounding towns, such as Sherburne and Westwood, even Natick, but they're not as rural as we are. But if they have that policy, then we should. And I don't think the pushback would have much weight if that were the case.
So I had a conversation with Mark about this. I want to say 8 or 10 months ago. In fact, it might have been during the summer. Oh, it was during the summer last year, because I don't know if you remember this, but our camp agent, Phil, went looking for one of the camps that he was supposed to inspect. And he drove to the Connor Center, where he discovered the town rec program in process. And he became a little apoplectic about it because he didn't know about it and he thought it should be regulated, and he was ready to shut them down because they didn't have a permit. And then I think it became clear to him that they were exempt and so forth. But Mark and I talked after that about the possibility that we would end up licensing them this summer. I didn't say it was something we had decided to do, but we talked about the possibility, and he seemed to be quite comfortable with that in our conversation.
Given the fact that, I think as Jason said, these regulations are there to ensure the safety of the kids. I think it actually is wise for us to license the park and rec camps and all the other camps that take place in town. If for no other reason, then it's good governance and, protects both us and park and rec from, potential liability for not taking the appropriate steps.
As a church camp, Grace Church runs a camp, I think. Have they applied?
I don't believe so. That doesn't,
So is there any exemptions in the state rules regarding religious groups?
no. Yeah, just I guess my only concern at this point, so it's June 5th. Most of these camps start in the next, week or two. If they're not prepared at this point, it kind of feels like it would almost be too late just because of the amount of work that's involved. Putting together all these plans, doing all the Corys and Sorries for employees, reference checks, heads up training, all that. So I don't know if they haven't, and I don't know this to be the case, but if they haven't done any of that, then that would be tough. Because if we're deciding to license them and I go to inspect them in a week or two and they have none of this, I have no choice but to say no go. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So I guess maybe I'll have to.
Well, listen, if the state regs mandate Corys and they haven't done them,
They do Corys and Sorries. I haven't asked that question recently, but I know that they have done them. I mean, that's their policy.
but again, we
Right.
verify that, don't we?
If we license them, yeah.
Yeah.
But in years past, we have no idea what they've done.
Yep.
You're talking about Parks and Rec.
No, in general now.
Oh, yes. Yeah, every camp we check that, yeah.
But Parks and Rec, I'm virtually certain does Cory and Sorry checks. But even so, even if they are doing everything that they should be doing, it would take them probably weeks to put together the paperwork into a packet that Jason could use to license them. I agree, it would be very difficult for them. But is there some sort of middle ground, Jason, in which they kind of do that you meet with them and talk about the fact that we are going to regulate them in 2024 and we'd like to see what they're doing now and see to help them understand whether there's anything they need to be doing differently going forward.
So you're saying license them next season, not this season?
Yeah, but not just say we're going to do that, but spend some time with them this season, maybe once they get going, starting to go over with them what the requirements would be for licensing.
Yeah, because I mean, in reality, the hardest part for camps is the first camp season, because that's when you're doing all the initial legwork for the most part, where you're putting together all these lost camper plans and these natural disaster plans and things of that nature. So then the next year, for the most part, 80% of the paperwork you're submitting are all the original plans you've already done. So if they don't already have all that, then I don't know how someone's going to do that at this point for this season. So
Right.
they could, or they could already have all that. I don't know. I'm just trying to give
It
an
would be
idea.
useful to know what they have. And if there's something ultra urgent that they don't have, maybe we can
Yep.
expect them to at least put the effort in furnishing that.
But do that without it's being part of a formal licensing process right now. Does that seem reasonable to do?
Yeah, because Kay, I might have questioned your that saying that it would take them many weeks to do this, but in as much as our tick flag is still not up, and they do have a pattern.
Well, but I think even every camp spends, I mean, it's a huge number of person hours that get put into getting the paperwork together for licensing. And I think to spring that on them in almost the middle of June would be.
Well, Jason probably knows what things are crucial in terms of safety, that we could ask whether they've done or not.
Well, couldn't Jason sit down with whoever's in charge of this? I guess it's Mark, and review the checklist that needs to be gone through for licensing. What about kind of spending an hour with him, going over what they'll need to do for licensing next year, and asking him where they are with each of those at this point?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I did with them. I met with him, and I think it's Nicole who's the assistant. A few months back, we kind of had that same meeting you just described. The only thing is I don't know if I told them, we're definitively going to make sure you guys get licensed for 2023. I don't know that was explicitly ever said to them. I think it was more of a, this is kind of what my expectations, will be of me coming in here as a new health agent to the town. But I don't know that I ever told them, for sure. So we haven't talked about it since then, so I don't know where they stand as of, this first week of June.
Did you ask of them of anything in the last meeting to provide?
Yeah, so I basically went through all the requirements of them, and some of which they already had.
But did you ask them to provide anything as a result of that meeting?
I believe I told them they should start submitting materials and whatnot as we get a little bit closer to camp season. But our meeting was probably, I don't know, January or
No. Have they submitted anything?
no, I haven't heard a thing.
So what if you were to call them and ask them and say, where are you with submitting application for licensing?
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I think my expectation at this point was to at least get something from them, but I haven't heard.
Yeah.
Anything. That's why this is kind of coming up all of a sudden. Because I mean, it's a little late to be getting a camp application at this point. I think technically you're supposed to submit all your materials. I don't know if it's either 30 or 90 days prior to opening. Typically the camps don't abide by that, but you at least get them, a month or a couple weeks before. But nothing as of June 5th seems a little late. 'Cause some of them I've had since March, so.
So I'd call them up and ask what they're thinking about this. Ask what their intention is.
Sure. So depending on where they stand, are we okay with me making the call on whether I want to license them for this year or hold off till next season, or how do you guys want to approach that?
I'm okay with that. I assume that you know far more than we do what the crucial things they need to have done are.
Yeah, I agree, Steve.
Ditto.
Doke. Sounds like a plan.
But but I would say we may need to really ride herd on them a little bit over the next year if they're not going to be licensed this summer, to make sure they're getting stuff done on time.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe up to this point, it's partially on us, because it doesn't sound like anyone, including myself, ever told them explicitly, you're going to be licensed for 2023. I don't know that ever happened, so maybe
Yeah.
that's on us to some
Yeah.
extent. We'll just have to make clear.
Make it clear for
For
next year.
2024, this is definitely going to be a thing, and if you're not ready, then no camp, sorry.
Do we need a vote on that?
No,
Okay,
I mean, you guys are always welcome to vote, but I don't think one's necessary.
okay.
Okay. Public health nurse update. Shall I go with this?
Yeah, if you got one.
Don't have much of an update. We did have a meeting about 3 weeks ago with the town administrator from Sherburne, with Carl Valenti, Diana Acosta from the Shared Services Program, and Daryl, Jason, and myself to talk about the details of this. And it went well, and Carl's questions, I think, got answered. It's quite clear now that the funding would be for 3 years, and that there would be adequate funding for the Sherburne portion of the position. So the next step is, I guess, final approval of the job description, and then there'll be, there needs to be an intermunicipal agreement drafted between Sherburne and Dover. Steve.
Correct me when I'm wrong, please. I understand that there was money that Dover had to fund a full-time position,
Halftime,
half-time.
or 25 hours a week, I should say.
More than half-time.
Yes, more than halftime.
And were we to have a shared position with Sherburne, we wouldn't be able to avail ourselves of the money for that because we've already voted for it. Is that correct? It's already been allocated.
Yeah, exactly. We're stuck and we're married to that amount, no matter what happens on the Sherburne side.
So Sherburne might get something from the state for free that we are paying for.
Right.
Correct.
In that amount of time that we would have allocated for this position's Dover use, would there be adequate time to perform regularly home health checks on our frail elderly?
In the amount of time that we'll have for the public health nurse?
For this position that we're discussing currently as a shared position.
We can decide what this person is going to do.
I'm
It's,
just saying, would there be adequate time to do that?
it depends on our priorities. We haven't, I mean, we've created a job description that lists a tremendous number of possible responsibilities of this person, but without, there's no concrete definition that says this person will devote umpty-ump hours per week to tobacco education or alcohol education or immunization or whatever. We really haven't. The idea is that we will work out the job description.
Okay, it
That's
is my
one of those.
position that the most important task this person should have is doing wellness checks on our frail elderly.
Mhm. Well, that's certainly could be part of the job description.
It is my position that that's the most important task this person has. The current situation with wellness checks on frail elderly is fraught. And therefore, the attractiveness of having this person in this position was to fill whatever was needed to make that, have that be adequately addressed. If sharing with Sherburne compromises that ability, then I have a problem with the way it's structured.
Why would it compromise anything?
I'm just suggesting to you that this is a task that probably should take 10 hours a week. And if you're sharing with Sherburne, it doesn't leave that person much time to do much else in Dover.
I am not sure about this, but I don't think that public health nurses traditionally are doing clinical care for individuals beyond immunizations. But I'm not sure about that.
Well, we should be sure.
Jason, what's your experience from other towns with what the nurses are doing? Or are you not, you probably haven't been that connected to what the nursing departments.
Yeah, no, I had two awesome public health nurses that I worked with in Westwood. Yeah, home vaccinations, general wellness checks, blood pressure checks, all the above, really.
Seeing people at home.
Mhm.
So might I emphasize wellness checks and home vaccinations?
Mhm.
Do we know how big the population is that would need the home wellness check, Steve?
Well, it depends how you define the need. I suspect that's a tough one to really pin down, but there must be. I think that Carl Sheridan, who did this in a fashion, he certainly didn't do home vaccinations.
Jason, you heard about Carl Sheridan? Do you know what Steve's talking about?
Yeah, him and I have talked about it before. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
know where it's going. Yep.
Probably looked in on 40 or so households.
And how did he identify who those, which households he was gonna look in on?
Carl Sheridan knew this town with the back of his hand. And
People
therefore,
would just-
you know who Carl Sheridan was, don't you? Jake.
Yeah.
So he was able to have a lengthy list, and he was also worked with a COA in conjunction with a COA doing this.
He was just very well connected, and people they knew what he did and they referred cases to him. So Steve, I see it as our prerogative to decide how we want to allocate the hours of the nurse. We don't have enough funding in Dover for a full-time public health nurse.
But we do have enough funding for 25 hours.
Yeah.
That should be enough to cover my concerns.
I think that if we share a position with Sherburne, that it's likely that there'll be a 20-20 split, 20 hours and 20 hours, and that we will not have 25.
Well, I think we're missing an opportunity if we go the direction that's been outlined.
Because
Because I think there's a chance of not filling what I think is a significant need in town.
But why would we not fulfill that need if we decide as a board that that's what we want the nurse to do?
We've got a long list of other things the nurse could be doing too, that some of which we would hope they did.
Yeah. But it's either we go forward or we don't go forward with a nurse. I think the difference between 20 and 25 hours is not so great.
We should hire our own nurse.
So how would that make us better off?
We'd have more control of what the nurse did. We'd have at least some extra hours. And they would be all our hours.
So we'd have 25 hours instead of 20. Is that what you're saying?
If indeed it's 20, my guess is that that's not going to be a 40-hour position. It might be a 36-hour position.
The plan is to make it a 40-hour position.
Yeah.
And each town will be responsible for supervising its half of the person. So it's not going to be up to Sherburne to decide how the nurse allocates his or her time in Dover.
John, do you have any thoughts on this? Just as like get a third voice on this?
You know, I agree. It would be great to have a full-time nurse. We don't have that right now. We do have funds for 25 hours a week. Honestly, by the time we hire somebody, and given the challenges of getting them in and getting them up and running, it probably will be 20 hours a week. I think the first step is to try to get somebody on board and then try to understand what we can do. I agree with Steve that, you know, doing these wellness checks is important, and it would be important for the town to do it. But, you know, I'm also concerned that right now we have nobody doing anything, and we really have the opportunity to offer an important service here in town by getting this nurse. And I think getting a person in place right now is more important than trying to figure out the details of how they're going to spend their time. Like I was asking about the scope of the need here in town. And, you know, if it's 30 or 40 people, I don't even know of those 30 or 40, how frequent each individual would need to be checked on. Right. So, you know, it's hard for me to really weigh in on what's the most appropriate way to handle that.
And one other comment I wanted to make, and that is that I have heard that it's very difficult, much more difficult to hire a part-time public health nurse than a full-time public health nurse, and that it's our chances of success will be greater if we're able to have a full-time position that we post. Um,
I mean, yeah, I agree, it's not ideal, but it's the best we have right now.
There's an issue right now that we have to potentially redress
Which is,
regarding home health care. And is having someone under our aegis do it is the right way to do it.
and so why should we not hire a nurse shared with Sherborne?
Because I want to be highly assured that whomever is hired can fill that need that we perceive, at least I perceive, in this town.
And how would you go about assuring that, Steve?
We hire for 25 hours a week and go to the selectmen if we need more hours.
But I think Kay's right. It's going to be hard to find somebody who's willing to do this part-time.
I don't know that, but that may well be the case, but I've known a number of nurses who work part-time, a large number.
yeah, I think in the current job market, it's hard to find somebody part-time for this kind
If
of.
we give them benefits, it may not be.
I would say that, it's conceivable that if we start out with a shared position and we feel we need more time, that we could, I mean, depending on what Sherburne wanted, that we could conceivably expand and possibly even expand using the shared services grant money.
Yep, I would agree.
Because the shared services grant money can be used to supplement, not supplant what we have. But if we were going from a half-time nurse to full-time nurse, that would be supplementing and conceivably something that could be a shared service. But it does require sharing the service in some way. I mean, but we'd have to think about that.
I mean, how close do you think we are realistically, Kay? I think it sounds like the next step is for us to finalize this shared agreement between us and Sherborne. And then in theory, the posting goes live after that, correct?
Correct.
I would also suggest that this be presented directly to the selectmen, at least one selectman,
One in particular?
before we move forward.
When does the new town administrator begin, by the way?
It's his salary and contract are currently being negotiated. The expectation may be that that person begins September 1.
Well, we can certainly talk with one of the selectmen about it. Do you have a particular person in mind or a particular reason to want to go to the selectmen about it?
Well, I think, I'm not sure what selectman was most responsible for getting us that allocation that we have for nursing, but that's the one I'd go to.
Well, I think it was actually more Chris Dwelly than a selectman. I don't know. He must have talked to to the selectmen about it, but I don't know
Well,
who it was.
you can go to the oldest selectman. You can, you can.
You have no preference. I know who I'll go to.
Okay,
Um. Well, I feel as if it would really throw a monkey wrench in things right now to back out of doing something with Sherburne. I feel if, Steve, if you're serious about wanting to do that at this point, that we should take a vote on that, because we need to know for sure what we're doing. We'd have to let them know right away if we were backing out.
well,
I don't think it makes sense for us to back out right now. Right? You know, it may not be perfect what we have, but we have nothing right now.
yeah, and John, I agree with you with the caveat that somebody ought to speak to the selectmen, and maybe even someone else in town who is an influencer before we do this sort of thing.
I mean, is it possible one of the selectmen says absolutely not? You can't do
It
that?
is possible that selectmen do those sorts of things, and in all candor, I think, given the people who have the most impact right now in the town, somebody ought to speak to Carol Lisbon, see what she thinks.
She certainly knows about the public health nurse. Is there something in particular that you would say?
I just ask her if she's comfortable with our arrangement with Sherburne and this agreement.
Okay, I will do that. I'd be more comfortable asking her about that than the selectmen.
Yeah, well, certainly 2 out of 3.
All right, so it sounds like we're staying on course with the
Yeah.
nurse position as it's developing.
And I will talk to Carol.
Yeah, and you changed, Jason, that edit, you threw in HIPAA?
Yeah, you wanted a note about HIPAA, right?
Yes, I did.
So
Um,
Steve, can I talk about the HIPAA thing for a second? So HIPAA, I think what we want to have is something that alludes to privacy statutes, and there is something in the job description about privacy, but HIPAA does not, we're not a HIPAA covered entity. HIPAA covered entities are ones that do electronic billing. Any other healthcare organization is covered by state privacy statutes. So I don't want to mention HIPAA in the document because it's not technically correct, though I think your concern is about privacy, right?
I would certainly hard reference any state privacy statutes that exist,
Okay,
if HIPAA doesn't cover this activity,
okay. All right, good.
because that is a vulnerability.
Okay,
but so that piece is in there, right, Kay?
I will review it.
Okay, perfect.
There's something in it about privacy, but I don't know if it specifically states state privacy statutes.
Yeah, just, yeah, as
Make
long
sure
as it
that,
covers that
And,
basis.
and it means a certain amount of record keeping that's locked, that isn't subject to FOIA.
yeah, we're gonna have to figure that one out in the office. All right, should we talk about our administrative assistant vacancy?
Just point of order, I win the over under.
Jason really loses.
Well, if you recall, I said I hope to be done by 8 o'clock.
Oh, a technicality.
That wasn't my actual prediction for how long the meeting was gonna go.
John, you weren't around when we were predicting.
No, I'm sorry I was late. Mary was driving and had two flats. She went through a pothole
No,
and I had to run and help take care of it. So,
And you know, that strange video we were getting,
okay, I didn't know about that. I'm sorry. That was
No.
my head.
it was
no,
your.
actually, there was images of a quality motel, and that's what was a little bit perplexing.
So I don't know what happened, but I apologize.
2 flat tires means 4 new tires.
Yes, exactly.
Oy.
All right, Board of
All right.
Health Administrative Assistant vacancy.
Yeah. So,
And Steve, you got some intel on this today, right?
I did. But Jason, why don't you bring us up to date and I'll add my 2 cents.
Yeah, so actually, I know we've gotten applicants. I don't know how many. I think Steve knows the answer. But I have had a number of people around the townhouse inquire about it. As to how many of those have actually applied, I'm not sure of. I know one of which who I consider to be someone who would potentially be a strong candidate, is, would be interested in a 35-hour position. So should that develop, or should there be any other candidates who are interested in that, that's something we'll have to figure out. We are advertising as a 28-hour position, but it is budgeted technically as a full-time admin position in our office. So we do have the flexibility. It would just be a matter of figuring out hours, and maybe it's just as simple as modeling them after my own hours, since I'm doing 35 myself. So so do you know, Steve, how many people have applied?
So there is a folder in Mona's office that
Okay.
has the applications of approximately 10 people
Really?
who
Wow.
applied for the position.
internal people?
Well, that's the next point. Not one is an internal person.
Oh. Okay.
So if there are people internally who are interested, HR has set up a deadline of Friday
Mhm.
for applications. And I would be disappointed if we didn't see any from internally.
Yeah, I mean, it would make a lot of sense. Obviously, we want things to be as fair as possible. You want to give everyone a fair shake, but it having an internal applicant would, it'd be an easy transition for that person. So it'd make a lot of sense. They're already familiar with the town and everything. So, but who knows? Any outside applicant, any one of those could be the best candidate in the world. Who knows? But that's good to hear. I didn't realize we had so many.
Did she let you sneak a peek?
I looked at every application. I
And
looked at every application,
are there people
and
who,
I checked with them beforehand whether that was allowed.
Yeah, and I should be able to look at
As of
them.
now, I would encourage further applicants.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I can, that's something I can look at too. I should have the ability to review those as they come in, any resumes or anything. Okay, well, that's certainly good to know. Yeah, see what happens by Friday, I guess. I hope some of those internal people who have inquired actually do end up applying. That would be good. Anything more on that?
how are we coping on there's one day when Linda doesn't work. How are we coping with that? Which day?
She doesn't want,
His
He doesn't work
statement, he will
on
be
Mondays.
present that day.
We both spoke at once.
Go ahead, Jason.
no, I was just gonna say it's So Wednesday is the day that Linda is off. It's pretty much a non-issue, just for me, I guess. I'll need to make it more of a priority to make sure I'm spending the majority of the day in the office that day. Because you guys know I kind of schedule things and do, various inspections, and things come up any given day. There's really no set day. So I'll just, as things come up, I'll just have to kind of make it a priority just to make sure I'm not spending too much time out of the office on Wednesday. So that's kind of my plan. There is a week at the end of July I'm taking off, it's like 6 weeks from now. So maybe that Wednesday, if we don't have anyone to staff the office, if we don't have someone hired by then maybe we'll just have to close for that one day. But other than that, we're pretty much going to be covered. So there really shouldn't be any concern. We're going to roll on and make sure we're covered as best as possible. So
I wonder if there's somebody who works part-time elsewhere in the townhouse who might be interested in covering that Wednesday as a temp, so that there's a body in the office, and even if they
So
just.
we mentioned that. And I would hope that that could be the case.
yeah, and for all I know, we could have someone hired by then.
Yeah.
If the deadline is Friday, in theory, we could start interviewing people next week and have someone, hired by the end of the month. So
That's, with the current applications, that's unlikely.
Did you mention it to Mona, Steve? Is that what you meant? You said,
Mona had left the office. She told me she had to leave, and so I haven't interacted with Mona about the individual contents in that file.
Yeah.
And actually, Mona just takes the application, puts in the file, and the HR people are the ones who, there's an HR assistant in that office who's temporary, because we don't have a full-time HR person, the HR person who does act for the town shows up, I think, for one day every 2 weeks.
mhm.
So that being the case, there's an assistant who goes over those applications theoretically, but he had not done so yet. So I don't think the HR people have seen any of those applications in terms of examining them individually.
So it's quantity over quality at the moment is what you're saying.
We have 10 applications. So I've got something on COVID tests, and I know the hour is getting late, but something transpired in the office today was a little bit worrisome in terms of COVID. And that is, a citizen came in for requesting some COVID tests, improperly masked. And her comment was, I want to make sure I'm over this. So those of us who were in the office at the time got potentially exposed to this person who was wearing her mask below her nose. And there may be a better way to do this in terms of reducing the exposure of people going to come in with it's still unresolved COVID or whatever. The windows obviously have to remain open as much as possible. But it might not be a bad idea to have the door open, except when the air conditioning is required to maintain a comfortable temperature. Just get a little more circulation in the area.
Do we have an air filter in the Board of Health,
Right outside the door?
but not inside?
No.
How many?
The one outside the door covers like 2,000 square feet, so
Yeah, it doesn't help if the door is closed. But-
it's usually open.
And what about the number of COVID tests? Aren't we about to run out of them?
It's dwindling, and they're only technically good for another 3 weeks. So, we're about to be done with those anyway.
Is there a
Anything-
way for us to get more?
We'd have to
Um,
pay for them. The state is not giving them away free anymore.
Yeah, my plan was to not get any more unless somebody really insisted that we needed more.
Well, I suspect there'll be a call for them. But if we don't have any, we won't be able to answer that call and people will have to purchase them, which will make them a little less likely to do them. And that's the state of affairs. It'd be nice to be able to continue to afford our public free tests.
How many are we giving away a week right now, Jason, would you say?
I don't know, less than 10 probably.
We gave away 8 to this one person today.
Yep.
So let's say we were giving away 10 a week, and I don't know what they cost. They would cost us $18 a piece, something like that.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot.
No, I'm just wondering if there isn't something out there that gets you some free COVID tests that aren't outdating in 3 weeks.
I'm not aware of anything at the last Department of Public Health webinar that discussed this. They talked about the fact that there would not be any more free COVID tests to local boards of health.
Well, there are other entities in town that we could approach. The Amelia Peabody Foundation, unlikely, the Dover Fund, possibly, the Dover Neighbors Fund. Are you folks aware of that?
Mhm.
Yes.
So if we think this is a service that we provide that gets people more likely to test when they should be testing, then we might consider alternate paths to having some COVID tests available. We don't have to be giving away 8 at a time, but maybe we should be giving people at least a couple if they think they have COVID or they think they may or may not be over it.
I think in an ideal world, the tests would be readily available and free. But the number of cases of COVID is dropping is way down in Massachusetts. And
It's great. It's just that we know of at least one in Dover.
yes, unfortunately, way too well. Oh, God. How long was she in the Board of Health office?
Fortunately, less than a minute.
Oh, thank God. You could also argue that most people in Dover are going to be buying their own tests, and on the margin, it wouldn't be very many people who would do it only because they were able to get it free at the Board of Health.
Yeah, there are some people who were really stocking up on our tests. when
Yeah.
they're- But were we to go to some pains to have tests available at no cost to our citizenry, we could certainly limit the number that people might have access to, and maybe it would work if there were some benefactor for at least the short term. And then when COVID comes back, maybe the government will reinstitute this.
I mean, if maybe at least, even if we don't get any more, if people at least inquire, we can maybe come up with recommendations we can give them on where they could obtain them.
And we could price the locals around to see what it costs so that we can recommend the least expensive to people.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm about to throw
Run
away a
out.
box of them in 3 weeks, so that I can't give away. So I'm not sure I want to actually obtain any more on our end, but I think at least if we can direct people on where to go, I think that's something we could do at the very least.
All right. Anything else that people want to talk about today? It being almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah, anything on 40U or a butter notification at all, just so we can,
Kick it down the can, down the road, kick the can down the road in those.
Okay. All right, then. Shall we adjourn?
All right, sounds like a good plan.
All right. Bye, everyone. I'll send the recording to Linda tomorrow.
Oh, availability of recordings.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how to get to view an old recording.
I think you go to Felicia.
But there should be a little more seamless route for our citizens as well as us to look at old meetings, which are recorded.
Have you asked her how easy it is for somebody to look at an old recording?
I might have, and it might have been too hard for someone like me to figure it out.
You know, I think this is one of these situations where once we have a town administrator in place, one of the things we should start talking about is getting the recordings of all the various meetings up on the
Yes.
town website.
okay, my understanding is they automatically save to your Zoom account, right? On like the cloud.
Our personal Zoom accounts?
No,
Yeah.
to,
Okay,
The Board
On
of
the Board
Health.
on the Board of Health one. And they also get uploaded to a cloud that administration and Felicia has, right? So so that group has access to all of it.
so you
Right,
think
so
I have access to the past ones? I know I have access to the one from the most recent meeting and can forward that, but you think I have an archive that I can access?
I think so, yeah.
I can check that.
all right,
Let you all know. Okay,
I move we adjourn.
a second.
okay.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Have a nice evening, Jason.
Thank you
Hey,
all.
Steve,
guys.
nice
Thanks.
seeing you both.
Sorry to have dashed your hopes about ending at 8:15.